Your mind goes into various associations, perhaps into some vague picture of what the word means. And I'm talking about the word revelation. Now, you know what a revelation is. Something that you see that you hadn't seen before. Something revealed to you that was a blank before in your mind and in your life. Now, the most powerful and beautiful of all revelations is a truly authentic religious one. Let me tell you what a truly authentic religious revelation is. First of all, it is nothing that is wildly emotional. It is nothing that is theatrical. It is nothing that increases egotism while pretending to give you a more advanced spiritual life. A real revelation is a work of reality, of God, of truth. It is something that comes from a higher source than the mind that receives it. All at once, already, you can shove aside 99 to 9/10 of so-called revelations as simply wishes of the mind to have an experience which then calls a revelation. And how tragic and how foolish and how dangerous it is for any man or woman to take his desire, which becomes fulfilled in some way in the exterior world, taking his fulfilled desire as a revelation from God. How tragic, because such a person will never know God. Such a person will know exciting imaginations. Such a person will know something exciting to talk about to himself and to other people. Here, we're going to understand what real revelations are, and what they are is something utterly practical in the spiritual life. Nothing that feeds our usual vanities, our usual excitements, but something that increases your power of insight into yourself, into your life, and into reality. Something that will actually change the kind of a human being you are. So this means we're going to have to get ourselves out of the way. We're going to have to stop telling reality how to run the universe now. We're going to have to stop thinking that we already know what the answers are. And you know, when we do pack our minds with our own information and facts and call that spiritual revelation, when we do that, we're not aware of it. So it's an essential thing at the start for all of us to see where we might be deceiving ourselves about this matter of spiritual revelation, so that the authentic, real thing, practical thing can come to us. To do this requires a very special kind of ignorance. An ignorance that comes out of real humility, where you've sensed some of the things we just talked about, that you have been kidding yourself, that you've been in your own way. And so that you have the kind of an ignorance that knows that it doesn't have the facts about true life, but wants to learn them. Isn't that a right humility? A human being who knows he doesn't know. Not knowing the answers, he says, well, I'll see what happens when I remain ignorant instead of filling my mind in again and again and again with the same old answers that answer nothing. Now, this kind of ignorance is quite a different thing from an evil mind. You can have an ignorant mind, and this kind of ignorance with its humility that wants to learn, that's one thing. And an evil mind, a mind hardened in evil, is another thing. And I will tell you that I'm describing most human beings. You know what an evil mind is? It's a mind that also knows that it doesn't have the facts of true life, but pushes the facts away if they approach, pushes them away in hostility, in a deep violence that it doesn't show on the surface. An evil mind knows that it doesn't know and has no intention of learning. So we can start tonight to begin to gather together some of the ingredients which will invite, not create, but invite the kind of revelations, something that is higher than where we are now, the higher position, something that comes down from a higher position than we now occupy. And when we do that, it raises us to the new position. And again, you can find yourself, by watching your own experiences, you can see yourself changing. You can see yourself getting a little less anxious about the future, about your life, a little less insistent that you know what you're doing with life. You don't know what you're doing with your life. The leaders of the world don't know what they're doing in their positions of leadership. This is how they escape their problems, by leading other people. The world and everyone in it is running around, everyone telling everyone else how to live, and no one really knows. I will tell you that there is a way for you, for me, to change everything so different. You won't recognize yourself. You won't. You'll say, what is this new person who's walking around here? Not that you did it yourself, you understand. What is this new person that looks at the crowd of people or looks at the headlines and it isn't afraid anymore? Little by little, the revelations that will change you will come to you because you have taken a certain start, you've taken a certain idea, and you've been given thousands of ideas, and you've taken maybe just one of them, and you said to yourself, I'm going to start with just this thought, and that's all it is for now to you, a thought, and I'm going to work with it. I don't care if it takes me 20 years, 30 years. For the rest of my life, I'm going to take this one thought, a dozen thoughts. I'm going to experiment with them. I'm going to see if it's true of itself. And I tell you that the proof of truth will come to you when you simply let it. Of all the words that we have used to describe virtues in the spiritual life, none is more value than that of persistence. Because if you persist, you'll see everything else. You'll see where you've been making the mistakes. You've been persisting in the wrong way, right? For all these years. You persist beyond that, you'll see how you can begin to persist in doing the right things for a while. And I'll tell you a story about it. There's a man who was driving through the African fields of Africa, where all the fierce animals are. And he was driving his Jeep down the dusty road. And he looked off toward his right, and there was a large field out there. And what he saw so horrified him that he pulled the Jeep to a stop real fast and just stared at the very strange sight out there. Now, this is a very powerful spiritual application, so you listen to this. What he saw out there that terrified him was another man who was standing out in the open field, and he was surrounded by several fierce animals, savage beasts. There was a lion within a few yards of him, growling at him. On the other side, there was a hyena. On the other side, a rhino. On the other side, one of the wild dogs they have in Africa. All these dozen or so beasts were surrounding him. And it looked like the man was gone because the animals were just about to attack, it appeared. And as the observer watched, the strangest sight he'd ever seen in his life happened. And what happened was, the man surrounded by the animals walked over to the lion, just casually walked over to the lion, and whispered something in his ear. And as the man watched, the lion looked a little stunned, shook his head a little bit, turned around and walked away. The man went the opposite direction and went over to the hyena, and he whispered something in the hyena's ear. The hyena appeared shocked, and he stood there stiff for a minute. And he turned and walked away. One by one, the man went over to every one of the dozen animals and whispered something in his ear. Cupped his hand and whispered something, and the animal walked away. And the witness to all this was stunned. What kind of a miracle is this? He said to himself. So I waited a little bit till all the animals were gone, and the man who had talked to the animals that way, whispered to the animals, started walking back toward the road. So the observer couldn't contain himself anymore, so he walked on over and he said, "Sir, I saw a miracle of the ages happen just now. What's this all about? You hear these savage beasts were surrounding you, and you went over there and you whispered something in the ear of each one of them, and they suddenly turned into defeated animals instead of savage ones. They turned and walked away. What's it all about?" The man said, "Oh, to me that's a very commonplace occurrence, because I walk and roam through these fields and jungles quite often. It happens all the time." The man said, "Yes, but what did you say to them?" And the man said, "Oh, I said to them a secret that was told to me many, many years ago. The man who told me this was a very wise man who knew how to handle beasts of the jungle. And he gave me this sentence, which I whispered to the animals, and once I did, that was all I needed to do." Of course, by this time, the witness was about going crazy, just maybe as you are. And I said, "Yes, but what did you say to them?" Shall I drag it on a little more? And I said, "Oh, that's simple. I just walked to every animal, whispered in his ear. And what I said to him was, 'You have the wrong man.'" Don't you know you can tell that to the world? Don't you know you can even be above telling it to the world? You have the wrong man. Oh, you're living in an African jungle wherever you live, aren't you? With those human savages around you. And just now, because this secret hasn't been revealed to you, and you're surrounded by all these beasts, they've got you where they want you, don't they? Haven't they? And this man told the observer the whole story, which is the story of our spiritual development through spiritual revelation, which is, you hear a truth just like that, you've got the wrong man. And at first it doesn't mean very much to you because it's just words. And so you start thinking about it, exploring the sentence, trying to see the deeper significance in back of it. And gradually, as you let the revelation of the meaning behind the words come through, you begin to feel different about it. You begin to feel that there's something more than the sentence, than the words, which at first you say so mechanically. If you started tonight, any of you, with that sentence alone, you've got the wrong man. Someday you'd say it with your whole spirit. Someday you would be even far above even saying it. Your life would say it. You would live it. You would be it. You're telling the whole world you've got the wrong man. You're not going to scare me with higher taxes. You're not going to scare me with threats of wars. You're not going to scare me with any of the headlines you can put on the television and on the newspapers. You've got the wrong man. You've got the wrong woman. We have lived that way long enough. Do you see what you're doing? Now what you're doing. Instead of living from the whole spirit, from reality with a capital R, instead of living from that, you're living from a very inadequate instrument, which is called your thought-producing mind. You have a mind. How many here have a mind? Some of you seem doubtful about that. You have a mind, and it hasn't been adequate at all. Adequate. It's crouching in a corner, afraid of the whole world. And you had better understand that you can't do it with your mind, not even with a clear mind, but that is the open door to revelation. A clear mind is the open door to these revelations, these higher things that we're talking about, which would lead to a whole spirit. What would you give? I'll put it as a question. What would you give to be able to be surrounded by the animals of this world of human beings, of rumors, of viciousness, of sour emotions. What would you give to be surrounded by them and be perfectly calm so that you could walk over and whisper in the ear, "You've got the wrong man. You could have done it to me 10 years ago. 5 years ago you could have." You're wasting your time. See, when you tell an animal that, and you're talking from your spirit, they know you're talking from that. They know that you understand. You understand enough just to go over and tell them that. And that scares them immediately, and they will walk away because they see they can't scare you. I've told you, and I'll repeat to you. Well, how many of you get frightened? Let's see that. You all raise your hand. When you get frightened, do you know what that causes the lion to do? You know what it does. It causes that lion to growl and put his claws out toward you and start chasing you with those jaws. When you tremble, it makes the hyena excited. I'm talking about human hyenas, human lions. They get very excited when they see you scared because that's their food. This is the food of human animals, to get you in a position where they can feed off of your wrong emotions, off of your wrong reactions. Revelations start with an idea, such as the idea you've been given. You've got the wrong man. Starts with that. As you begin to think about it, ponder it, take it into your whole life, practice with it, try to see the depth of it. As you do that, then a second factor enters, which is your feelings. And if you were to work until your mind became clearer, until your mind begin to get clear in the whole idea of what we're talking about, this rightness of your mind then would be joined by right feelings. And when the two come together, you are different. Those two elements coming together produce a third thing, which is the revelation we're talking about. Now you've got your mind and you've got your feelings working right. They come together, and you can walk up to any situation. "Oh, my dear sir, my dear madam, you've got the wrong man. I'll tell you this for your sake. I know it, but I'd better tell you, so that they don't come around and waste your time, bother you by surrounding you and things like that." Now listen with extreme care to what I'm going to tell you next. Because in this talk, while everything is important, this next point is of special importance. Because here's where millions, billions of human beings go wrong. The first right revelations that come to you with this humility, this right humility, the first right ones are very dark. They're not bright at all. They're not cheerful at all. You see, you have so much of the past to undo. You can still remember the pictures you used to see, religious pictures, where a man had a revelation of some kind and he looks happy and he looks fulfilled and he looks spiritual. And that's called a revelation. You had better listen to what I'm going to tell you next. The correct order is to go through dark revelations, which will then lead to bright revelations. If you put bright ones first, you're false. If you pull it out of your mind somewhere because you want to impress someone, impress yourself, you say you had a conversation with heaven last night, and now you're so happy and everything has changed, you're going to be morose tomorrow. You're going to be depressed tomorrow because you have put a false revelation, what you call bright, which is really dark because it's deceit, self-deception. You have put that in the place of the right order. Now, what do we mean the right order is dark revelations? Well, let's see. Do you have conceit in your life? Do you love to argue? Do you love to cause trouble? Do you love to fight? Are you a know-it-all? No matter what, you know what it is. An expression on your face is one of contempt towards someone who's trying to tell you something authentically valuable. And you're hard, and your spirit is hard, and you don't even know it. if you want the real revelation that will change the kind of a human being you are, then you're going to have to see how hard, how arrogant, how foolish, how no matter what the subject is, you know the answer, right? It's pretty shocking. That's pretty hard on the vanity. But that must come first. Absolutely all the way, 100%, a grinding, a great pain. You go through that. If you go to the other side of it, you'll come to the bright side. Don't forget the right order, or you'll kid yourself and you'll never find the truth. And you'll go around having to insist that you've found the truth at last, you've found God, and you don't even know how vicious you are. You don't even know how angrily you defend what you call your God. How violent you are toward anyone who disagrees with you. And if someone comes around and tells you that you're a faker, you could easily get violent, couldn't you? And your eyes flare up. And you don't even know it. And if I put a mirror in front of your face, you would say, that's not me, I'm sweet. You had better start seeing yourself as other people see you and as you don't want to see yourself. Upon that comes your salvation. Upon that depends your ultimately seeing of these higher truths that can enter and chase out all the darkness of your self-lying, of all your hatred of everything that is good and true. There's no such thing as being too strong in this room. There's no such thing as being too strong, because we have so much work to do and we don't have time to fool around. Now you leave the fooling around to people who want to go out and drink and entertain and do all the foolish things they intend doing for the rest of their lives in an effort to block out the howl of pain which they will never succeed in doing. And I will tell you again, and go on to something else, that seeing the dark side of human nature, and that's the only side there is as long as you're lost, is essential for you to see it in yourself and to see it in other people. There was a oasis out in the desert ruled by a sultan. And the sultan was a good man, and he knew that travelers going by the oasis would get thirsty. So being a good man, he told his servants to put a table and water out near the front gate so that travelers going by could take the water and continue on their journey if they didn't want to come inside the oasis. So the servants got jars and cups, put them outside the gate, kept it filled with pure water from the deep streams inside the oasis. And the servants watched with interest to see how the travelers would come and take the water. As they watched over the days, they were surprised to see that not one of the hundreds of travelers who came by stopped to take the water. They stopped just long enough to look at it, and then they went away on their camels and horses. And they were astonished. Here was fresh water put out for them, and they didn't want it. They kept watching. Well, the same thing happened. Eventually, 200 or 300 travelers looked at the water and went by. So they said, well, let's ask, let's find out what's all about. So they stopped a few of the travelers, and the traveler said, we don't like the shape of the cup. We don't like the color of the jug that's put out there. We don't like the designs on it. So the servant said, well, the Sultan said to put out water for them, so we will. So they changed the designs of the cups, tall cups instead of short ones, changed the color of the water jars. Put them out again. Same thing happened over and over. No one wanted the water. They couldn't understand it, so they said, well, we better ask the Sultan what it's all about. So they went in, and as they did, the Sultan said, I've been waiting for you. I knew that you'd be here because I've been around quite a while, and I know what those travelers out in the desert are like. You see, there are two explanations to the experience you had. First of all, they don't want the water at all. They're so used to their salty, brackish water that they're traveling with that they're actually suspicious when you put out that fresh water from the oasis. They think you're trying to trick them in some way. They're wary. They stay away. They go away. They think you're trying to get something on or hurt them in some way. Second, because human beings can never talk in a straight line, the excuse about the shape and the color of the cups and the jugs, that was just another form of deception. See, human beings can never say anything directly. They can never say, I don't want the water, I don't want the truth. They can't go right to the point. They have to use something false. And so all they could think of is, I don't like the shape or the color of the jugs. Sound familiar to you in our experiences? Haven't you seen it a lot? You've talked to people, and you wonder, well, did they come to the class or did they read the book? And they give you some excuse. Didn't you sense that the excuse was false? You listen to me. When I tell you, people don't want the truth, period. You want it stronger than that? With most human beings, truth is the most hated object on earth. But do you think that any human being is going to come right out and say that? He has his images to protect. He has his public reputation to protect. So he's never going to say outwardly what he feels inwardly. We're nothing concerned with nothing, but facing ourselves. You face yourself and you face yourself, to see that this is the fact with us and get those deceptions and those lies out of the way. Never mind the cup, you're not interested in that. Why don't we just come out and say, if I was to look very directly and clearly inside myself, I would know that I'm in enmity with what's going on in that room. You see that? There's hope for you. That is a revelation. Isn't that a beautiful revelation? Because it's factual. And you can go on from there. That one yielding to God, to reality, that one yielding will make you so rightly excited. You'll look for more and more, and you'll change, and you'll change. And you'll see life different because you'll be different. We'll have questions and comments. Keep them short, please.
Before you started your talk, I was going to make a comment that it surprises me that this room isn't full of people, but your talk explains exactly why.
You're really not surprised, are you?
Right.
No. It's always surprising the opposite, that anyone ever comes back. That anyone ever comes back after hearing it 2 or 3 times. You won't come back to this class unless you're pretty desperate. Undesperate people who think that the slot machine is going to do it or the drink of whiskey is going to do it, they're not interested in this. They're interested in their kind of salvation. And there are 10,000 salvations to the world, and how many have each of us tried over the years? Has it worked? How about the salvation of a hard, bitter spirit? Have you tried that yet? Didn't do anything for you, did it? Rebelling against that stupid husband, that equally thick-headed wife, that doesn't do any good. Nothing that you can do will do you any good. When you come to an end, there will be good, not for you, but for something that is not you. Now solve that mystery.
It was extremely encouraging for me personally to hear you say that the revelations are dark before they can become light.
There again, that point alone is enough to clean out this room of most new people. Look, you've been going to church all your life. You've been around positive thinkers all your life. You've been around hopeful people. And the idea of a good thought is your idea of goodness. The good thought. Tomorrow things will change for me. You don't want to change. Your most precious possession is fighting with your spouse, either with words or mentally and emotionally. I don't know how I'm going to get it through to you. That what you love most of all is your suffering, your pain, your conflict. If you cease to love it, it would go away. And that is just what terrifies you. You don't want it to go away. I'll feel empty. Of course you will. You'll begin to extinguish yourself, which is what true life is all about. I said you've seen the darkness in you. You've seen all your hatreds, all your bitterness, your shames of the past. And you cling to them. You're loving them. You're thinking in time. I am telling you, everything can be canceled if you will cancel yourself. You and that shameful experience are exactly the same thing. You and that burning hatred that you've kept covered up all these years toward that person that you thought betrayed you, all this self-pity and self-doubt, all of that you just hug to yourself, don't you? Don't you walk around with it all day long? Don't you go to bed with it so that one of your great pleasures in falling asleep is to think of someone you hate? And added to that is your dear love for confusion. You fear clarity. You don't want it. Because you know that in a clear mind there is not you. Why don't you risk giving yourself up? Why don't you risk even the exploration of seeing what it means to give yourself up? You don't know what it means to give yourself up now because you haven't even explored the possibility of it. All you know is you. And what a wretched existence that is. All the forced smiles and all the hopeful looks out at the world and all the social and domestic respectability and all the education and all the books in your library and the dinner that you're going to look forward to and the baseball game on Sunday afternoon. They are driving you mad. But you don't know what to do. You'll find out here what to do. But not if you go away. If you go away, you have said that I love the world more than I love God. And you can go to church 7 days a week and love the world more than you love God. And when you get scared about something, you get down on your knees and pray. Look at the God you have built up that you're now praying to. You're just talking to yourself. Are you so foolish, so ignorant to think that God, the light, truth, and decency can occupy the kind of a life you have? The kind of a mind that you go through your day and night with? Greedy and looking out to make 10 cents extra profit. And you have your nerve to think that you have something to do with God and religion and spirituality. You have nothing to do with it at all. And do you know that God himself knows that? You don't know what a hypocrite you are, how divided you are. You don't know how you know not what you're doing. You don't know that you're simply a blank force moving around, bumping into people. You don't know it because you've never looked to see it. God knows it. The angels look down, and out of every million people maybe, and they look down and they see maybe that man over there, that woman over there, maybe they have had it. Maybe they're ready to take one simple little thought, an idea, like you've got the wrong man. And at the beginning, feel the rightness of it. Wouldn't you like to be able to say to the world, you've got the wrong man trying to scare me anymore? Trying to threaten me? You can scare my neighbor over there, the man down the street, the man in the other country. Look, look, I've gone through it. You're wasting your time. Give the world to the world. The whole business, everything. Let them have what they want. That is all they're going to have. This is not threat. This is not saying in revenge. I'm telling you a fact. You get what you really ask for. That's what I'm talking about. Haven't we received what we've really asked for up till now? Haven't you? Haven't we? Of course we have. Our ignorance has asked for it. We talked about a very special kind of ignorance, didn't we? An ignorance which is willing to remain ignorant to see what happens as a result of it. Now when you're ignorant, you fill it up with more ignorance and call it intelligence and guidance and wisdom. You get afraid of being ignorant. Why are you afraid of not knowing? You're afraid because you have a false knowing. If you remain in not knowing, something would change inside because you are no longer occupying the space. And when you don't occupy it, you're ready for a revelation. Your life is ready for illumination. And the miracle of God's work right in this world will come to you. You will feel the light. You will know the light. You will walk in it. You'll see every mistake that you've made in the past, and you understand exactly why you made it. You made it simply because you were ignorant and refused to stay ignorant. So that God, seeing your real humility, when you really see the ignorant and stay with it, God sees that as humility, and the light begins to enter. It happens outside of you. Kingdom of heaven is within and it's without, but it's something outside of our present system, our present ideas and thoughts. All right, you're on again.
In telling the world that we have the wrong man, we're telling ourselves that we have the wrong man also. Is that correct?
Yes, you can go on into that if you like, that you've been living from the wrong man. Is that perhaps what you meant, something like that? There's various ways you could take the illustration. That's one of them. Haven't you been living with the wrong man, the wrong woman, with yourself pretty long now? If there were only words, if I could show you with words what I'm seeing right now, I know the victory is won right now. It's done. It exists right now. But you are thinking and blocking it. You are thinking, what does that mean? If I could only understand. You are not going to understand it by thinking it. You'll understand it with the absence of thinking about it. That revelation will come to you. And as it comes, thoughts will gradually occupy your mind less and less, except for practical purposes, and the light will guide your life.
When I have a dream at night and then wake up and remember the dream and I'm relieved that I wasn't in the dream, that I didn't actually perform the dream now that I'm awake, that's the same feeling as I dreamt about the wrong man, had the wrong man at the time I did.
Okay, that's not bad as an example. Sure.
I've often felt a wrong feeling when you would say it's going to take you years to get through this. But you did explain in one phrase that we've got to undo our entire life.
All right, now listen to this, please. I said it will take you years. I also will tell you that it can be instantaneous. If we could see, we can't. We have walked in the wrong direction so long and so far that we have to come back to the main highway and then go on home from there. But if we could see it all at once, it could happen all at once. And you can practice in small ways Now to cancel time, to cancel the foolish past, which was foolish simply because you were asleep, not because you were bad. You're never bad or good. You're simply asleep under a spell. It can happen right here in this room sometime in a small way when a little revelation will come, so that instead of a thought about something you heard, there is instantaneous comprehension. Has it happened to you at any time? Or maybe outside somewhere? You know, and then the final test, and I know that a lot of you have reached this point, you don't even think of doing anything else with your life except increasing the intensity of self-investigation. Right? Look, do you still have anything else to do with your life? We know you have to earn a living. We're not talking about that. What do you have to do with your life? See? Somebody.
That kind of instant revelation where we're having a motivational meeting at the office, and then after the kind of a film, after the film there were different people in the room were giving comments, and all of a sudden I made a comment, and the moment I made it I knew it was wrong, because from the wrong motive. There was judgment and an agitation, and instantaneously, and then I dropped it. I thought,
Right. Exactly.
So clearly.
Exactly. Perfect example. Sometimes to aid in that sort of a thing, which we all have to go through continuously, many years, sometime in the morning, take a little piece of paper and write on it just a little guide for the day. It doesn't have to be a long, just 2 words. Just to remind you of this sort of thing. For example, you could take a little piece of paper and you're going to a business meeting or just going out in the world. Here's the sentence. No foolish talk. Right? Now you've started the day off right. You're going to remind, here's a good idea. The idea is no foolish thought. And you put a little slip of paper in your pocket and you take it out and you talk to dozens of people, and sooner or later, you're going to catch yourself saying something to please him or to be a jokester or something like that. And the instant revelation. That's right work.
See, recently it seems to be revealed to me a great deal of my weakness.
Speak louder, please.
My weakness has been more revealed to me lately, that is fed by fear. The indecency of it I can see, but in watching it, it gets so intense sometimes I have to back away. It gets so strong that I can't stay with it forever.
All right. Remember the importance of keeping your attention where you are at the present. No matter what you're doing, keep your attention there. Attention to what's going on inside of you and what's going on immediately outside of you. One of the worst things that can happen to us as spiritual students is to forget to remember what we're supposed to be doing at the moment we're doing it. Now, in your case, if your attention had been a little more alert, if you knew where you were there and the situation came up, you could have caught the wrong remark starting somewhere. You know, it starts way down. You have to see it starting. And maybe you're nervous or excited, you want to relieve your tension. You can see the release of tension starting to come up into the foolish remark. But instead of saying the foolish remark or letting it form a full thought, you catch yourself as it starts to come up and you say, I'm going to suffer by not releasing it. And it will cause you a little suffering, won't it? Because it means you're not going to be able to escape a little embarrassment or nervousness you felt at the moment, and what you wanted to release with a little foolish remark. So you suffer consciously now, don't you? But you catch yourself and you say consciously no to it. There's your jolt. There is your revelation, which proves that something stronger than you can handle foolish you. Isn't that nice?
The nicest thing I ever knew is that I can live different than I always lived.
You can what?
I can live a different life than I always lived before.
Oh, I tell you. We were all mad.
I was shocked, horrified, and scared by something I saw on the news tonight. Now, the world tells me that I'm kind and sympathetic to feel that way, but that's not at all what you were saying tonight, was it?
You know what the world suffers from? Besides ignorance. Plain old weakness. Nobody ever to say this is wrong. And all the sentimentality. All the love of your brother. That brother you love is going to kill you. I am being factual, and I know it. And I don't care if 4 billion other people on earth don't understand it. I know it's a fact. We'll talk about a subject tonight that's not very popular, because the experience of this We'll talk about a subject tonight that's not very popular, because the experience of this topic is not at all popular. I'm talking about the experience of being afraid. You're all very much afraid, aren't you? So many fears you couldn't get them down into a large notebook. And so varied and so mysterious, so hard to get a hold of and try to understand. But we can say that as a general covering statement, that human beings are simply afraid that they can't take care of themselves in this world. Doesn't that cover it pretty well? Human beings tremble and shake, fearing the rest of the day and tomorrow and the next 5 years, fearing that their strength is not adequate, that their wisdom can't meet the challenges of what's going to come up in domestic life or financial matters, that you're unable to handle yourself properly. So both the inner world and the exterior world becomes both mysterious and baffling. And we just don't know what to do about it. And this topic of fear is really very rarely discussed in depth. And the reason for that is that it is simply not understood by people. Even the experts. You ask a man who's supposed to know the answers, what about fear? And he will give you an answer, but I will almost guarantee you that that man is afraid himself. But if he has an image of being someone who's not afraid, who has conquered fear, if that's his image, then he must try to live up to that. But he'll go home scared and lonely like everyone else. I will tell you from the start, fear of all kinds, no matter what your fear is tonight, what dozens you may have, I will tell you that every single one of them can be dissolved in the light of higher understanding. Now there it is. Start with that while we proceed. We're even afraid that truth is going to harm us. Listen to that. Truth, reality, God, which is trying to take away our trembling, our anxieties. Truth which is trying to take it away from us, we fear it. We even think that truth is accusing us. People who come to a lecture like this for the first time, and at certain times certain things are said to them, they think they're being accused. You're not being accused of anything. No matter what you've done, you're not being accused. How does that help you? To slander you and tell you all the wrong things you've done, fallen victim to in your past. How does that help you? What reality tries to do is explain your actual condition to you. And in that explanation is the answer that will set you free from these haunting feelings that you have, from looking out at the world and crouching back from it, hoping that today you won't get hurt as badly as you got hurt yesterday. So even the truth, which we don't even know, when it tries to present something to us, we push that away, blanketing it, thinking that it's going to hurt us like everything else seems to hurt us. Now I want you to follow what's going to come next, because here is a truly spiritually scientific explanation of fear. All fear. No exceptions at all. You think of something that you're afraid of tonight, right now, or afraid of today, or have been afraid of all your life. And the process that I'm going to explain to you now is the answer to that. And 10,000 more. It will free you of fears that you're not even aware of yet, that are so deep you haven't brought them up where you can even suspect that they're there. Here it is. We see or hear an event out in the world, or inwardly. But we see or hear an event. That event arouses a reaction, does it not? It arouses a thought. You meet someone, you meet a strange situation, you're watching a television show, and you have all these thought reactions. The event, the thought, and then comes the problem. As thought gets active and starts to move along, it runs right into the jungle of uninstructed and immature feelings. Here's a pure thought so far, but the nature of thought is to be active, to move in a certain direction. And when it goes to a certain point, it falls into the trap, the attack by immature feelings, emotions, moods, likes, dislikes, and the thought is distorted and defeated in its purpose, its true purpose, right purpose, of going on through to where it fades out of the mind naturally. You've seen thoughts come and go, have you not? So it's when a reactive thought starts to move that it falls into trouble with an attack by immature, that is, emotions that don't understand, low-level emotions, low-level feelings, and the individual shakes. Now, a little deeper into that. When he starts to shake, when the woman starts to shake because the thought has been captured by feeling, it is because the individual has allowed himself to be separate from his true nature, separate from reality, separate from God. This thought is the prodigal son that has wandered, and the wilderness is the negative emotions, and the person trembles because he knows, he senses that he's apart from where he really should be, which is in harmony with his own essence. So we become afraid when a thought, which is pure at the start, a reaction to something, is taken over by self-centered feelings so that the thought itself gets all mixed up and joins the emotions, and now we have two things going against us. And all this is happening inside of us. You see, not once in this process have we attributed any power, any authority, any evil even, to the challenge that came from the outer world. Someone screamed at you down at work. The problem wasn't in that person's scream, it was in that you took the reaction, the thought, went into it, the thought traveled along, and you, because you're not alert, because you can't see yet inwardly, which we'll get to in a minute, because you can't see inwardly, the thought was captured and distorted. The completion of the thought from the very beginning to the end, passing right through the negative emotions, not being affected by it, The completion of the thought is a successful inner journey. Here's the parallel. Imagine a young soldier stationed at a fort way out in the isolated prairies and hills, Army fort in the days of the early West. And he has been assigned as a dispatch rider, courier, I guess you call it, by the colonel of the fort. And his task is to take important messages from the fort to the military headquarters off at the edge of the prairie in the big city. Now this young soldier, try to see this spiritual application of this, please, as I talk. This soldier is known as having sharp eyes, eagle eyes. He can use a sharpshooter out on the rifle range, and he was selected as a dispatch rider, dispatch carrier, because of his sharp eyesight. He could look out in the hills and see animals moving out there, and all the rest of the soldiers would envy his extremely sharp visual capacity. So the colonel gives him a message to take to the military headquarters 100 miles away across the hills in the prairie. And the young soldier jumps on his horse and of course gallops away. And he goes out for about 20 miles. All is well up to about 20 miles. Then at that point he's attacked by hostile Indians, by bandits, by all the bad people out in the hills there who are just waiting to attack him and take whatever property he has. And so he's attacked and he fights back. But the worst part of it is, as far as he's concerned, is that he didn't complete his mission. His mission was stopped. And now he feels ashamed, and so he has to ride on back to headquarters and report to the colonel that he failed in his mission to complete the journey. So the colonel says, all right, here's another message, try again. So over the next several weeks, the same soldier starts out again, races off. As he gets out into the hills, he's attacked again, driven back, and each time he goes back in shame. You get the parallel already? You notice how shameful you are, how ashamed you are when you don't live up to your own expectations of yourself? Now, you remember what this soldier was famous for and why he was selected to be the courier? His reputation as having sharp eyesight, being able to catch things out in the hills, seeing those bandits ready to swoop down. But he failed. He failed to live up to his reputation. Now he's ashamed, he's embarrassed, and he began to wonder if he's as clever, as sharp as he was supposed to be. So he goes out many more times and he fails each time. Each time he comes back defeated. Till finally something occurs to him, to the soldier, the young soldier itself. He saw what prevented him from completing his journey, his mission. He saw that his own vanity, his own conceit, his own phony sense of dignity and worth, he saw what prevented him from completing his journey. And the colonel knew it, but the colonel understood certain things that every soldier has to learn to ride by himself. He has to be all by himself and learn for himself. And what the young soldier found out was that he deliberately left behind his binoculars because he had the reputation of being all alone, being able to handle it naturally, his natural powers of his great vision. He was able to see everything, but he failed. His reputation was unwarranted, wasn't it? He wasn't able to do it by himself at all, but he said, I've got to live up to the reputation, and so he deliberately forgot the binoculars which could have helped him. He grew up a little bit. After several defeats out there, he knew he was no match for the wily bandits out there in the hills who was there in ambush. So he called on something, listen to this and understand. And don't think this is just ordinary philosophy. It's something very high. He knew that he had to depend on something higher, stronger, wiser, more perceptive than himself. And in this case, it proved to be a pair of powerful binoculars. So on the next journey out, he took his binoculars and he's able to see much, much farther. You know how binoculars work, how you can see way beyond your ordinary vision. And this time he was able to catch the bandits as they were coming. You know that, by the way, a little side thought, that when you look through binoculars at night, that it lightens the night? It collects light in some way. You not only see farther, but it's lighter in the vision, in your vision through the binocular. So by using something that was more powerful than his own eyesight, he made the journey successfully. What's higher than your ordinary strength? When are we going to take and see that our vanity, our reputation, how many of you think you have a good reputation with other people? What's your reputation to yourself? You don't think very much of yourself, do you? Here's your lesson for tonight to take out of this lecture and think about. Think of the word, several words, I'll use some synonyms. Think of the word self-conceit. Think of the word vanity. Think of the word pride, self-pride. And see how these words practically dominate our lives. Now look, some man or some woman does some foolish little thing, and his wife or husband says, oh, you know, he has his pet vanities too, like the rest of us. Don't you dare ever again make light of vanity and call it a minor vice. It is ruling and wrecking the lives of human beings on earth by the billions. Now, I'm going to repeat. I want you to think of the word vanity. If you want to take just that one and concentrate it, please do. Take the word vanity. Even look it up in the dictionary if you'd like. And then you see where your vanity, where you have a certain reputation to yourself. Maybe other people don't think much of you, but look how you praise yourself. And you see how your vanity is preventing you from seeing that you're your own worst enemy, how you've been depending on yourself, how you can't indeed take care of yourself. And that will be the beginning of you saying, I don't understand what it's all about, but I know that I can't complete the ride for myself. The young soldier is a thought, correct? The bandits are our emotions. The binoculars are something higher and stronger, a cosmic vision. And if you suspect and fear, if you fear that you're going to get attacked by those bandits, you will get attacked by them. Because the very fear means that you're still in the state where you're attracting them, where they are stronger than you are, because you're not depending on a power, a vision that is stronger than your own. That young soldier had to go through some destruction of conceit, didn't he? See the reputation he had? Besides, do you really think that other people think as much as you think of yourself? We'd like to think so. I wonder if they say things behind our back that they don't say in front of us. Do you suspect? Do you talk about people behind their back? From now on, you will see the great power, false power, by the way, of destruction in being vain. Vanity means that you think you can do it all by yourself. If you could have, you would have. Correct? If you could have, you would have. And you would have come into this room in a different way here tonight. See how we're covering quite thoroughly and in a special way the topic of fear. As long as you think you can make the ride all by yourself and go to the other end of it all by yourself, you're going to be afraid all along the way. There is no fear when you can see. How can there be? Seeing, the soldier saw through the binoculars, he could see the bandits a long ways away, couldn't he? Once he saw them, he knew how to act. You don't know how to act yet. Instead of casually and easily riding away from the bandits of negative emotions, you ride toward them. Because you still like them. You like the feeling of them. How about giving up that love? How about giving up your fondness for being attacked? We've talked about that subject before too. The very peculiar fondness that human beings have for being victims. If you don't think you like to be a victim, if you think that doesn't apply to you, watch how often you get your feelings hurt. Why do you ever get your feelings hurt about anything? You tell me. Because you think that you can cross the prairie and the hills in this negative world all by yourself. You think it, but you don't know it. There's something right, not wrong, about any man or any woman admitting that you can't take care of yourself. Why don't you admit it? It's a fact. You cannot take care of yourself, and you know it. You can't stand alone. Oh, you say it and you quote phrases that you read in a book somewhere. Do you or don't you actually, factually stand alone in this world? If you really are doing it, you will know it without thinking about it. And if you even have a little argument inside of yourself right while I'm talking and saying, why does he say that I'm not standing alone? Well, I'm the most independent man I know. Why did you have to say that? Why did you have to convince yourself that everything is all right? When everything is all right, when you have those binoculars, you don't think about it. You will act purely when the challenge comes up from the outer world, and that thought won't be captured. When the challenge comes up, something comes along, you know you are not in danger. Now you know you're in danger, don't you? You think you're in danger, and that's true. You're in danger from your own ignorance of what life is truly all about. You're in danger from your own refusal to see what life is all about. I'll ask you this question then, right now. Right this evening, as you're listening to this, does your life make sense or doesn't it make sense? Your life does not make any sense at all, and you know it. Now look, please, you're not being insulted. You're not being told you're inferior. You are being told very, very definitely that you're deceiving yourself. You're being told that you still very highly prize your own vanity over authentic inner freedom. You're being told that you value your arguments, that you prefer to fight. Answer this, please. Come on now, be logical. What sense does it ever make for you to fight anything or anyone? Now, if you think it makes sense to fight, then you also think that it makes sense to be in pain. How far are you going to go with your illogic? Why don't you stop right where you are? See what you're doing to yourself. See that you are trembling. See that you are indeed, the way you are now, no match for those bandits in the hills. Those bandits in this world, and those bandits operating inside of you. Why don't you simply see that you're no match for them? That they can scare you now. Of course they can scare you now, because you don't see and understand life. If you're out there trying to deliver a message that is passing through life, and you start to tremble, I'll tell you what to do, and it'll stop the trembling. You turn that horse around, and you gallop on back to the fort as fast as you can, and you run to your room, your head sleeping quarters. You go get your binoculars, and you put those on the saddle, and then ride out. This is the end of all fear. Again, what were you afraid of today? Did you notice any, or did they just pass unconsciously through you? Are you watching what's going on through you all day long? 1,000 fears, some of them very subtle, some of them out in the open. Anything that you've been afraid of all your life. Remember when you were a little boy, a little girl? Remember how you started to tremble then? Then you learned how to conceal it, how to fake it. Because you saw other people, big people, faking it. You said, all right, if I'm afraid, then I guess I'll be afraid. And the thing to do about it is to cover it up. For example, saying, I'm not afraid. Lie about it. Just lie about it. Say, I'm not afraid. And all the time you're saying not afraid, your hands are going like that. Your mind is going 1,000 miles an hour. Your feelings are quaking. I'm here to tell you that's not necessary. You don't have to do it anymore. If you have that pair of binoculars, cosmic consciousness, higher vision, truth, reality, if you have that with you, you can ride anywhere around the world. Go anywhere and you not be afraid. See, this higher vision sees and understands everything that's going on in this earth. Everything. Inside you, inside everyone else. And the very seeing of it is the perfect protection. Because out of that seeing, as I mentioned earlier, out of that perfect vision comes perfect action. Oh, you'll be able to evade the bandits. You're not evading them now, are you? Didn't they attack you today from inside? And from outside, didn't they go after you? And you start to shake? You don't have to put up with them. Look, here's as simply as it can be put. We live in a world where everyone is afraid. Now, there is something that exists in this universe that is not part of the fear of this world. That something is called God. It's called something that is not you. Now, what's standing between us and this higher vision, which is perfect action, which is perfect protection? I urged you to study it a little bit earlier, and I'll repeat it. Find out. Find out if your life is making sense. Be honest about that. Say it makes no sense at all to be afraid of my spouse, to be afraid of the economic system, to be afraid of anything at all. That doesn't make sense. And now you look and see where your hardness, where your vanity is preventing you from saying, your vanity is preventing you from saying, I'm authentically scared. There's nothing I can do about it. There is nothing I can do about it. There never has been. And then you remember what you've heard. That what you can't do for yourself, something different from you can do. Now, you've never known anything different from you. You've just lived with your own memories, your own vibrations, your own pains. I tell you, there is something else. You will find it when you give up your ideas about yourself. See, you have no sight now. You're too afraid, too trembling. You can't see and understand when you're trembling. Go back. Bring the binoculars, higher truths. And I absolutely guarantee you that if any challenge comes along, bandits close, bandits at a distance, you will spot them and you will know what to do. They'll never be able to touch you. Never. Nothing can touch you anymore. The ride is free. And you'll ride all the way to the other end. And when you arrive there, you'll understand everything that we've talked about tonight.
Vernon, could you talk more about letting thoughts pass naturally?
About What, please?
Letting our thoughts pass naturally.
Yes, a thought passes naturally. It comes up first, and it passes naturally, look, when nothing interferes with it. And the only thing that can interfere with a thought is, guess who? You. The supposed you, which is made up of other thoughts, stops other thoughts to see whether it's acceptable to it or not. See, we're all Supreme Court judges in our own deluded minds. And we even think that we have the power to judge thoughts rightly. So the judgment is stopping them. Never judge your own thoughts at all. That's identification. That means you say, I like that thought because it flatters my ego image, right? I don't like that thought, or I don't like that person because he went contrary to my thoughts about the great, marvelous human being that I am.
Right.
How many of you think that you're great and marvelous human beings? How many of you are deluded? When nothing stops thoughts, they perform their work rightly. Now, I'll give you an example. You're doing work around the home. Let's say you're setting the table. You have to think, don't you? You have to think plates, silverware, salt and pepper, things like that. When you say plate, think plate, you go get the plate out of the cupboard and you put it on the table, and that is the end of it, isn't it?
Right.
Now, just suppose you were neurotic in some way. You were frightened by a blue plate as a child. How many have been frightened by a blue plate? Green plate?
Yeah.
So you get the blue plate out, and it arouses self-memories. So all the time you're taking the plate off the shelf, of the cupboard, to put it on the table, this can happen. It happens all the time.
Right. Yeah.
You take the dish down, and all these thoughts are going through your mind. You should have thought plate. That puts you into right action toward the plate. You take it, you put it on the table, and that's the end of it. Wouldn't it be nice if all our thoughts were that way? A person says something what you call harmful. You hear him say that. The thought is, that person spoke to me. And then other thoughts attack it and say, you have no right to talk to me that way. See, you're attacking your own reaction even. When you no longer exist as a self, as an entity in your own mind, all thoughts will arise, pass through, exhaust themselves, and disappear. Just as you do it properly if you're not identified with a blue plate. Plate, you take it down, you put it down, and you forget it and go on to the next right practical thought, correct? Find out where wrong feelings are grabbing a thought, distorting it, and preventing the thought from continuing to make its trip successful across the prairie. And we said, if you watch pride and self-conceit, that's what's stopping it.
Why is it that you're the only man I've heard talk about spiritual matters who has a sense of humor?
Well, most people who are supposed to be spiritual are not, and that is a fact. A person with no sense of humor at all is giving himself away. And do you see how? He's giving himself away because he believes in himself. And look at the self he believes in. He believes in a spiritual self himself, which is his burden, not his liberty. He believes in ideas about himself. And when you believe in ideas about yourself, you are deadly serious. And you're afraid that someone's going to come along and topple you off of your own pedestal, right, off of your own platform. He doesn't dare be lighthearted, because if you're lighthearted, you're off guard, aren't you? This is what he's thinking. You've got to be serious. You've got to be watchful. Who's going to attack me next? That's not spirituality. Spirituality is lighthearted. It has no self to carry around. A person who is supposed to be spiritual and religious and supposed to love truth. And if he goes around with a heavy spirit, He has only the words and none of the music. What do you have to be serious about? Everything that you are now serious about is wrong. You're serious about protecting your precious reputation. As if anyone cares about you. And as if you really care about your own your own old reputation. It's simply something that's a convenience for you to use because you have nothing better. There's something better.
I want very much to contact this power higher than my mind, but everything I try sooner or later ends up to be a delusion, a dead end. So I'm lost.
You can't figure out life. You can stop trying to figure out life. Let me ask you why you don't do that. You're trying to figure it out, are you not? How you can get ahead, how you can feel safe, how you can prevent other people from hurting you. Aren't you trying to figure it out? And doesn't that drive you crazy? I have told you, the mind is limited to practical things here on this earth. But you're trying to use it to do the impossible. And in the story I told you, that soldier riding across the prairie did not have the vision of his own self. He had to get something higher and stronger and wiser than himself. And when he did that, his problem was solved. Intellect can never solve the problem because it's the cause of the problem. Then what are you going to do? See, you're trying to figure it out right now. You're trying to reason, well, how do I find this higher power? How do I contact God? And practically everyone who asks that question goes wrong. Because then they create their own God out of their own thoughts. They even create the kind of rewards that this God they've built up in their minds is going to give them. They've even described that kind of heaven they're going to get. Talk about madness. You have to give up. And to give up, you have to understand what it means to give up. And what it means to give up, to see that there's nothing and no one to give up. Then there's two things happening. The operation of proper practical thought and something higher than thought, which you know nothing about, but which you will know everything about when you go all the way. And you start going all the way when you get to that point where that young soldier did, when for the 10th time he went out trying to spot the bandits with his own strength, his own visual strength, and he saw he couldn't do it. He had real intelligence. He saw that he needed help. The farther you wander away from truth, the less you know you need help, and the less you're going to ask for it. Don't wander too far, or you'll never be able to get to the point where you can say, I need something outside of myself. You'll keep turning inside and saying, surely such a magnificent spirit as mine can solve my problems. That so-called magnificent spirit you have is a dark spirit and is mangling your life. You have to look outside of yourself, not inside to your own neurosis. Knowledge of this has its place, and you get an awful lot of that knowledge, a lot of those facts here. Once you have the knowledge, the rest is up to you. And it's up to you to experiment. And I gave you ideas for experimentation in the earlier talk, in which you see that there's vanity involved. If you, now listen, you want to find out what is vanity so you can go on from there? So you can go on back to the fort and get the binoculars, which can help you to see? There is vanity in you if you're a touchy human being. If other people say the slightest wrong word, you jump at them, internally if not externally. You're living in self-conceit if you're angry all the time. If you feel put upon, that is, people impose on. People are always coming around and getting things from me. I never get anything from them. They're always getting things from me, always asking me to do things. You're living in vanity. On and on. Look, somewhere you're going to have to start to work instead of just listening to talks. And if you do, you will have the reward. Would you like the higher reward? Now you know how to get it. It is yours for the working.
What is it in my manner?
Say that again, please.
What is it in my manners that attracts the pounce?
In your manners? Oh, all sorts of things. Let's cover one of my favorite observations in that. Facial expressions. A person who is lost can also be very cunning because self-interest is always very alert. Men do it toward women endlessly. A man wants a woman. He searches her face and he looks to see how she reacts in the smallest of ways while he's talking to her. And if he can see weakness in her, if he can see fear in her face, even as he's talking to her, if he can see shyness and uncertainty, that encourages him. And that attracts his pounce or his wrong aggression toward the woman to get what he wants. All right, toward any two human beings, the same thing applies. Two men, two women, anything. People search you, and if they spot weakness, they pounce. Now, I see weakness in every one of you in your faces. You're walking around with vacancy on them. I don't see alertness in your eyes. I see hardness. I see tension. I see uncertainty. I see a frozen mask, and I know what's behind that frozen mask. You're attracting it for one thing alone, by the way you appear to be in your face, your eyes, your mouth, the way you talk, everything, by what you talk about. You are attracting everyone who's lost, who's sick, because they say, I need some food today, and so they'll try to get it from you. You ask for everything you get. No more alibis. If you get hurt by someone, you permitted yourself to get hurt. And where were you tricky with that other person? Where were you trying to get something from him? Where were you reading that woman's face, that man's face? You want something from him and you feel him out a little bit, right? The little hint, the little suggestion. And if they fall for that, you go on to the next one, and you're stopped only when the other person stops you because he or she doesn't want to give you any more of what you've been getting. And then what happens? Nice, pleasant, generous, kindly you turns angry and resentful. What right have you to stop giving me what I want? Don't get mixed up with the sickies in the first place. If you get mixed up with a sickie, guess what you are? You're a sickie too. No excuses accepted. Never under any circumstances.
The going back for the glasses in the story should mean to us to remember the practical exercises from this class when we get in a crisis, right?
Yes, it can mean remembering anything of a practical nature that would add spiritual sight to you. It can be 1,000 things. You've had so many lessons here. And riding back to the fort where the binoculars were is simply symbolic, an idea of you going back inside of yourself and remembering what you've been taught and practicing them, yes.
Is fear at the root of all negative emotions?
It's involved with it, yes.
About vanity, I have observed it in myself, and I dislike it very much, but it doesn't change. Is that because I'm not observing it fully?
Oh, you dislike vanity?
Yes, when I see it in myself.
Who is disliking vanity?
Another eye?
Well, if you dislike vanity, do you still keep it? Does it still continue with you?
Yeah.
All right, now I'm trying to break down what she said. You dislike vanity. Are you sure?
Well, I see the pain from it.
Do you continue to be vain?
Yes.
What are you doing wrong?
I don't know.
Come to every class.
So to use the mind correctly, it can only be used, the memory of it can only be used correctly. Is that true?
All right. Let's see if I'm answering your question the way you ask it. Memory connected with a false sense of self wrecks the life because it perpetuates the false life. Now, I've made a statement. Do you want to ask your question again?
No.
The mind does not like the fact that it's merely mechanical.
Well, it has its place. Mechanical has its place. But it wants to do more than that. Now, look, I will explain something to you. The reason little children behave so badly, so super badly, they throw things and spill their milk and things like that. The reason they do that is because they're not grown up. You don't throw your breakfast milk around the room like a little child does. You've grown up in that respect. We do other things. We mentally throw people around, right? Same thing. The reason for it is that we haven't grown up. And how many times have we brought out here that the purpose of life is to grow up, to not remain little children, spiritually speaking? So what is preventing us from growing up? A little child has to grow up physically, and that happens quite naturally. It will not happen all by itself once you grow up into an adult to become a spiritual adult. It does not happen by itself. With a child, growing up physically happens naturally. He grows up physically, and that's the end of his throwing milk around the room. You must take part in your own